Good afternoon. Welcome in. It's Where the 99 Lead. It's a program brought to you by the University of Pikeville, where we talk about the University of Pikeville and all things that lead to the University of Pikeville campus from those historic 99 steps, and also lead from campus back to the communities. I'm Andrew Joyce, special guest today, again, a repeat performance. It's Judy Bradley, UPike Director of Student Financial Services. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
I feel like I need to play the Welcome Back Cotter theme.
And happy 2012.
And to you as well. Of course, with financial services, it's a big deal for students. It's a big deal for parents. And that's why you're back today, because now 2012 is here. The last time we spoke, we talked about some important dates, some important things that need to happen very quickly in the new year. Well, it's the 3rd of January as we tape this, so that's about as quick as we can go. Now it's the parents and students' turn. They need to get going. Important stuff with financial services, and we want to talk about that and one form in particular. What's that form?
That form is called the FAFSA.
And we're going to talk more about that.
And we're going to talk more about that and the importance of filing the FAFSA as early as possible. We're going to give them some, now, like yesterday.
Yes.
I'm very surprised. We just came back into the university today, received a lot of actual email confirmations of students that have completed the application. So I thank East Kentucky Broadcast for giving us that opportunity in December and inviting me back to remind our parents and students how important this form is.
It's that big of a deal. We want to talk about all things with student financial services. A lot of feedback from our last show. I heard from some parents. Facebook's a wonderful thing. A lot of folks had messaged me, had commented on what a tremendous job. They had seen the show in its run on Pike TV, and they had messaged me, and they had learned some valuable information that they didn't know. And these are parents with college students already.
That's great.
And they're finding new information. So it is that important. We want to talk about the different types of financial aid, just to back up and give some information for someone who maybe has an incoming freshman this fall.
Okay.
Or whatever the case may be. We want to get some of that basic information back out there. So let's start where we did last time. There are different types of financial aid, and they come from different sources. First, let's go there. What are the different sources of financial aid?
Okay, Andrew. First, of course, we all look to the federal government. The financial aid sources there with the government would, of course, be the Pell Grant. Of course, I think last time talked about the types of aid in monies that are free monies. And basically, that would be your grants. You do not repay federal grants or state grants. But the federal grant and the Pell Grant is, of course, determined by the FAFSA application that we'll talk about a little bit later. You have federal loans that are called direct student loans. That, of course, is money that does have to be repaid.
Right.
Let me back up to the grant discussion. There's an FSEOG grant that is particular to some schools. Some schools may not be awarded that grant, but of course that's passed on to the student that have need. And we at University of Pikeville determine that need by the Pell eligibility. So if a student is fully Pell eligible, we call them full Pell, then they'll get the FSEOG grant. But again, the timeliness of this this application is important because we run out of that fund that we get. So the first student that might file that FAFSA that we receive that's full Pell eligible, they're going to get that grant first. And then, of course, we continue to award that until we run out of money.
At Jerry's Restaurant, there's a bottomless cup of coffee.
There you go.
In federal financial aid, it is not a bottomless pit.
No, sir.
That money has a cap on it, and when it's gone, it's gone.
Right.
There's no more going back for refills and continuing to fill that. So that's the importance of getting those forms filled out early. Of course, the FAFSA form, and we'll talk more about that, some important items along with the FAFSA form as well as we talk about some other types of federal financial aid.
We have federal work study. That too is another institutionally awarded program through the federal government that we pass on to the student. Work study is a little bit different. Students have to earn this money.
Sure.
And it's a wonderful tool to teach students the aspects of a job, going and working on time, doing a job and getting paid for. We have on-campus and off-campus locations. The off-campus is wonderful in that it gives us an opportunity to give back to our community, to a nonprofit agency where we can supply workers, as in students, to perform a duty for them, and then the student would be paid that work study payroll to go toward their educational funds.
And it's something that we learned last time that you were on the show. We talked about the off-campus work study, and I'm not sure a lot of folks were familiar with that work study could take place in a nonprofit organization, and there's some great
opportunity.
Postgraduate skills that a student can pick up in those settings that are off-campus. They get a taste of what real world is.
Real world, absolutely. And they can even focus on an area. Let's say a student was interested in doing community type jobs with, say, the chamber or the tourism offices. Sure. Wonderful opportunity to see what that's all about. Maybe help set up for Hillbilly Days. There's just so many opportunities to see what type of job they really want to get into, and then see how it really is when they work in that area.
See what type of job they want to get into. They may find out what type of job they don't
want to get into. Absolutely.
And because that is real world. Also, we had a recent guest on a Where the 99 Lead segment where we talked with the University of Pikeville, ROTC, and a great show with a guest who's an actual cadet. We talked about some of his college costs, how they were paid. And it is specific to each individual case.
Absolutely.
But that
federal money there.
That federal money there was huge for this particular cadet.
A National Guard, ROTC, that is another federal and state-supported program.
Sure.
So they can get money at federal level as well as state level.
We're talking about financial aid, and I'm talking with UPike Director of Student Financial Services, Judy Bradley. Federal aid, it's the first rung of the ladder, I guess. There's different types of aid, federal aid, and also institutional aid we'll talk about in just a little bit. Before we get there, what comes next?
We've got state aid, Kentucky aid. To get state aid, of course, you have to be a Kentucky resident. Once the state receives the application, the results of the FAFSA application, that then determines the student's eligibility for the state grants. Again, grants are free money, so let's talk about those. We talked about the federal Pell Grant. If a student is a Kentucky resident and they get any Pell Grant, now Andrew, we have some students, depending on their eligibility, that may get $400 in Pell Grant. They may get $5,000 in Pell Grant.
Sure.
The state CAP grant, which is Kentucky Access Program, that grant of $1,900, which is where we are currently today with that funding level of $1,900, that student would receive that grant, and it doesn't depend on how much Pell money they receive. So again, the state has to receive the results of the FAFSA in order for the student to be in line to get the funds before the money's depleted with the state.
Regardless how much Pell Grant
Correct.
money they get from the federal government, each student would get $1,900.
$1,900, and that's the number that we're set at now.
Right.
We don't really know, I guess, until state legislature meets and determines the level of funding for the 12-13 year, but we anticipate it to stay the same.
This is one of those programs that it's very important that the FAFSA is in early, financial aid package is fully completed, the application, because these funds run out quickly.
Very quickly. This year, this academic year that we're currently in, this is where most schools are getting ready to start their second term within this academic year,
right.
11-12. The funds depleted for CAP grant this past year, February 17th.
Wow.
So students that failed to file their FAFSA prior to that date missed out on that $1,900 this year.
And it is that important. More state money available.
State money, again, is important, again, on dependability of the monies. KTG grant, Kentucky Tuition Grant, is a grant that was developed many years ago by the state of Kentucky to help assist students attending private schools. So this is a grant that, yes, it is still linked to a need-based grant. It is, again, free money, but it is only available to students that are full-time at a private institution. That money ran out as early as March. I think it was March 6th or something this year. So, again, money runs out very quickly.
And that's why it's so important that you're here today, the first week of January, because it's that important that folks, parents and students, they get these forms completed and get these things taken care of. We'll talk more about this in just a little bit, because the Kentucky Tuition Grant, the KTG grant, available only to private school students. Well, as of January 3rd, 2012, the University of Pikeville is still a private institution.
We are still a private institution, and we are still operating as a private institution.
Sure.
You know, the school is going to do what it takes to help our students. So that will be determined, of course, as later things develop. But we want to take action as though we will be a private student, and we don't, or private school. We don't want our students to take a chance with any suspicions or any thoughts that what might happen in the future and lose out on close to $3,000 in that KTG grant.
No doubt. It's something that is that important. And the private school, the public school argument that many have talked about, we want to make sure there's no confusion with that issue,
Correct.
because it's something that is brand new. It's something that could take place very quickly, but it's all up to the legislature at this point.
Yes, it is.
So we want to make sure that the University of Pikeville is operating as a private institution still, and that's the way things need to be looked at.
Yes.
More state money available.
State money, you've got KEYS. KEYS money is something that our current students in high school are fully aware of. What they do, Andrew, while they're in high school, they earn a certain GPA per academic year. They're ninth grade through 12th grade, and they earn their KEYS scholarship. And then they take that KEYS scholarship to any Kentucky school throughout the state of Kentucky. That is money that student has earned. It is their scholarship to be used while they're in college. They still have to maintain a certain GPA while they're in college to keep that KEYS scholarship. But that is one award that is at state level that is not actually affected by the FAFSA application.
It's not dependent on income of the
not
parents
at all.
It's something that the students earn by getting it done in the classroom during their high school days. They earn a certain GPA. They carry that with them. Now, they get to college, and there have been some students who may have had a bad semester.
They might have a bad semester. You know, there's a transition in college.
There is.
And, you know, some very, very smart students still have that transition they face, and they may mess up a little, and that GPA might fall.
Right.
But the good thing about the KEYS is they can redeem themselves. They can get that GPA back up, and that KEYS money comes right back. But we in financial aid also have to make sure that the student is progressing academically to make sure they're on track to graduate.
Sure.
So that's another aspect that we in financial aid, it's not like we don't have enough to do, but that's another thing that we get to monitor, again, to make sure that the student is spending that scholarship wisely.
Right. And that money can be substantial.
Substantial. We now have weighted GPAs. We have weighted, you know, and also there's a bonus on the student's ACT exam. Once they take that ACT, they can actually raise that score on the national exam and raise their KEYS money. So we're actually seeing, used to in past years, students could earn no more than $2,500.
Right.
We're seeing students now with weighted GPAs. It's at $3,000, a little over on some students.
And that's per year.
Per year.
It's good money.
Good money.
Good money. And it's
Money that you don't repay.
Yeah, and it's certainly helpful toward the cost
And that's
of
the thing,
college.
too, Andrew, that we want to make sure our students that are still in high school, they can realize now that, you know, pick it up a little. A lot of times I don't hear students put a lot of emphasis into their schooling until their senior year. They then start thinking about college, and they think, ooh, maybe I need to get my act together. So those freshmen in high school need to kind of pay attention and to work hard and do their very best in high school so that then they can better prepare for college.
And maybe if there's a high school student or a middle school student even, who's tuned in, and they can realize from this, there's a reason mom and dad and teachers are pushing them
Absolutely.
to make sure they keep their grades up, because it does matter. And it's tough for a young student, a middle school or a freshman in high school, to understand the importance of grades before they get to college. Well, what does it really matter?
Right.
It matters.
It matters.
Yeah, it matters as to how much state money you'll get through the KEYS scholarship program. There are other state monies available?
There are. There is certain fundings. I know even our med school has state monies that are available for certain med school programs. There are teacher scholarship programs through the state that someone that wants to make a teacher can go through a teacher scholarship program that as long as they become a teacher and they work in the state, that remains a scholarship. Unfortunately, if they don't get a teaching job and stay in that profession, that scholarship turns into a loan. But, that's where we talk about the significance of this money available to you, and we help the student decide, is this beneficial to me, even though it may turn into a loan. Students need to realize a student that takes out a loan, that's an investment toward their education if they utilize it wisely.
Absolutely. Judy Bradley, University of Pikeville Director of Student Financial Services, a busy lady, and I would imagine a busy office this time of year because you're heading toward the second term. You talked about that. Federal aid, state aid, we want to push the fact that the FAFSA application needs to be completed today, no later than tomorrow, and get those taken care of. But those deal with federal money, they deal with state money, but they're also important because before anything can happen on the institution level, that has to be completed. We
need the results.
Let's talk about the institutional monies now.
Basically what happens, let me kind of give you a timeline. Once the student and parent, and we suggest that parent does help the student, but we want the student to realize that this is their education that they're seeking funding for. So it's up to the student to know, hey, I've got to get this done. Now I need mom and dad's important information to help complete it, but let's put the emphasis to the student. This is their responsibility. It's their education. Many times parents will want to come and meet with me without their student. Usually won't do that unless it's something very extreme, but on the most, for the most case, I would like to talk to the student, and of course, yes, parents. The process would be that they would file their FAFSA, like you said, tomorrow, no later. It would not take, Andrew, more than 25 minutes for someone to do this process. I say green. Would you not agree as a parent that's completed this form?
I've done a few of those, and the first time will take you 25 minutes. From there on, probably 20.
Yeah, maybe even less than that.
It's simple. Just have your numbers in front of you.
Have your numbers in place. Let's first talk, though, before we get into the application process, what they can do today.
Sure.
Within a 3-second period, they can go to pin.edu. pin.ed.gov, G-O-V.
It's very important.
Very important to get their PIN numbers. They will use the PIN site to get a PIN number for the student and one for a parent, and that's going to allow them to sign this application electronically. So what they'll do is they'll get their PIN number today and hopefully get on FAFSA, FAFSA.gov, and file the FAFSA. Now, I realize we are, January 3rd. I don't have my W-2, nor do you. What is it, the end of January, that our employers are required to get us our earnings statements? Students and parents can look at their last pay stub for 2011, or they can even maybe compare what they think they will make in 2011 to what they made in 2010. Use that federal return that they filed in 2010, complete this year's FAFSA for the 12-13 year, and do it as an estimate, and that's where we say it's a will file. And that is just an answer to a question that the government asks you on that form to say, have you completed your 2012 tax returns? They will simply put will file and then estimate the answers from that tax return that's not completed yet.
And it's one time that the government does allow parents to estimate.
Yes.
The IRS, they're not keen on that.
They're not keen on that.
But on this form, it does.
The FAFSA, the Department of Education, they are, because they understand the importance of students getting this application done in a timely manner. When you have a state such as Kentucky, where the funding at that state level depletes, we're not the only school asking our students to do this early. So imagine all of the students in the state of Kentucky doing their FAFSA application early. It's going to deplete even earlier.
Yes.
So I can't stress the importance of getting this application filed.
So this is a secret. This is only for University of Pikeville students. Nobody else is hearing this.
Now, part of that process is once the application's completed, and that's the other thing that's a misconception I too got feedback from. We, as going out to the students and talking to the high schools and the counselors and the parents, have seen that the misconception is they think this is just for the federal eligibility because it's in the title.
Sure.
We've talked about it being free. Don't pay anybody to do this. It's a free application. But the federal aspect of it is, yes, it is an application that the federal government maintains, but they send the results to state level and to all the institutions. I think there's up to 10 or 12 school indicators there that a student can list up to 10 or 12 schools on that application for the results to be sent to. That's when your school is going to put your financial aid together,
Right.
when we see the results of that application. So let's say you've got a school that has limited institutional monies. If they get 5,000 students FAFSAs in and you're 5,050 numbered student, you may miss out on even some institutional money because there were so many other students that were packaged with that institutional money that too might be limited.
It's very important, and we do want to talk about the FAFSA form. Again, that website's FAFSA, FAFSA.gov.
Yes.
And the PIN number, very important as well. It's something you'll carry with you. Parents and students each have their own, and it's pin.ed.gov. And I have one of those. It's in my wallet and has been for, 6 or 7 years, and I carry that with me.
And you guard that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You don't want to lose that because it makes the document process so much simpler dealing with the FAFSA, and it is that important. Talking with University of Pikeville Director of Student Financial Services, Judy Bradley, one of the most important people on campus. I don't care what anybody else says.
Thank you, Andrew.
Parents will agree that when it comes to college, somebody's got to pay the bills.
Yes.
And Judy and your staff, they help parents and students walk through that process, and certainly very helpful to an awful lot of people.
I have a wonderful staff. Matthew has actually helped me. He's presenting to a school today for me because I'm taping with you today. But we go out to all the schools throughout the region. We invite them well before Thanksgiving to schedule a time for us to come to the seniors at that high school. We'll have a overall meeting with them, go over specifics of the application, and then we'll offer to actually come back and have a parent meeting, maybe that same day, that same evening, or wait a couple days for the student to digest it a little.
Sure.
And then we'll have a parent meeting where we'll actually assist them with that. So I'd like to put a pointer out there that if a student or a parent might hear this and their school may not have scheduled us, or if they need personal help, by all means give us a call. That's our commitment from the University of Pikeville, is that we touch every senior in the region with the knowledge of how to complete this form. We'd love for them all to come to University of Pikeville, but it's so important that every student that plans to go to college understand the importance of this application.
We talk about financial aid, student financial services, and federal money, state money, institutional money, and I think a lot of folks are familiar with scholarships that are available to high school students, incoming students that a student might carry with them their entire college career. Athletic scholarships. Sports fans, they know what that's all about.
Uh-huh.
And there are also academic scholarships.
We
Let's
have
talk about some of the programs.
Okay, we have academic scholarships that are, first of all, created for, say, the incoming students, maybe fresh out of high school. We'll look at their ACT or SAT score, whichever test they took. We can convert the SAT to the ACT equivalent, and we'll award them based on that score. Basically, that is money that the student will keep for the entire term that they're in school. As long as they are academically eligible to remain at our institution, they'll continue with that. And it's awarded based on whether they're going to be on campus or off campus. A student that lives off campus will receive the tuition portion. Of course, students that live on campus, we've got another portion of that academic scholarship that is going to apply for tuition, and then another portion towards the room and board.
Of course, athletic scholarships based on performance, and coaches make those decisions. And there are players that might be able to earn additional scholarship money once they land on campus. They may enter college as a walk-on and become a scholarship-type player. Academic, that's based on test scores. And again, another reason when mom and dad are pushing you to work on your grades or to take a study course before taking the ACT. That's why the ACT is so important.
Very important. And we point students in that direction. You know, those tutorials for the ACT. And another thing that a lot of students and parents don't realize is most institutions do what we do here at UPike. If a student isn't happy with their ACT score, let's say they just know they can do better, and maybe they're like, my daughter would probably kill me on this, but she wasn't the best test taker, especially taking it with 200 of her other peers.
Sure.
So a residual ACT is something that we offer that would be given by our test coordinator, and basically it allows that student to increase, hopefully, their ACT score that we could maybe award a better academic scholarship. Now, there's guidelines to that residual as far as when you can take it, and of course you have to be not be a registered student to increase that, and that's prior to enrolling at our institution. Now, the caveat to that is that cannot go to any other institution, that
Right.
score, nor can it help towards their KEYS award. It's just an institutional exam that could help that, and we see a lot of improvement to help that student toward an institutional scholarship academically.
Maybe taking that test in a less threatening environment.
Less threatening. Sometimes they may take it alone. Sometimes they may take it with 4 other students.
And we all know the ACT has national dates.
Yes.
And those dates may not fall at the best
Correct.
time. Someone may have extracurricular activities the night before. Those tests are at 8 o'clock the next morning, and it's always not the best situation
Absolutely.
to take those.
And the neat thing is you don't have to wait so long to hear your results.
Sure.
You may come in, Kathy Pito, if I could give her name. She is our testing coordinator that does that. Again, Kathy Pito. And you just schedule the time with her. She does have set dates, but I've known Kathy to kind of give a special date if it needs to be done. And you know the next day after you take the exam what the score is.
Wow.
So that's pretty neat.
Very, very neat program. And we talked with Judy Bradley, UPike Director of Student Financial Services. Our focus today, we want to remind folks, the FAFSA. It needs to be done. It needs to be done now. It needs to be done tomorrow, no later than the next day as you hear this taping. We talk about the different types of aid available, federal, state, institutional, and the last time we talked about outside scholarships. We don't want to spend a lot of time there, but we do want to make parents and students aware that there are many outside scholarships out there, more than you can imagine if you'll just go search for those. And it's another way to help pay the college costs.
That's true, Andrew. And you know, like you said, sometimes there's not a bottomless cup like at Jerry's with that coffee. You know, your outside sources too. You know, you may work in an institution that as an employee of that employer, you may have availability for your child. That employer probably has a limited number of scholarships and dollar amounts that they're going to award to their staff.
Sure.
So a lot of times we have to give that result to that employer of the FAFSA. Sometimes an employer or a person getting ready to give a scholarship may need to know what type of financial aid, other type of financial aid a student may be receiving. We can't disclose that till we have, again, the FAFSA results. Right. So it all kind of circles around that wonderful application. Many of the areas have local scholarships. You know, our Rotary, our Kiwanis, we have so many different organizations that if a student just asks, or if a parent of a company just asks, they might surprise themselves. You know, and it may not be a big scholarship. We see, I have students sometimes leave my office in tears of joy.
Yes.
When they see that they've received enough of a scholarship, a smaller scholarship, to maybe cover books.
Right.
That's not quite so small anymore, but anything assists that student, they're going to be very happy to get.
I know there are even some businesses in the community, and I don't want to name names for fear of leaving some out, but there are businesses in the community that might be a financial institution, insurance companies, those type of businesses that if you're a customer of that business, one of our cell providers, they award a certain number of scholarships to customers or simply to students that apply. I guess the step to take there, the first step for those students is talk to their guidance counselor at their high school.
You'd be surprised the number of guidance counselors that tell me they have to beg their students to just simply apply. Many, just like you said, many organizations give us specific schools certain number of scholarships. Right. All they have to do is award them. And, you know, it may be an essay. It may be just something as easy as filling out an application or writing why you want to go to college. I can put so much emphasis on that, how important it is for them to rely on their counselors, because we try to also connect with the counselors on any changes, the urgency of getting this application. They understand that. They get that. So, again, the students and parents as well need to be encouraged to talk to those high school counselors.
Judy Bradley, UPike Director of Student Financial Services. At those particular high schools, there are even schools that have scholarships available only to students at that school from businesses and organizations in that community, maybe alumni organizations within that school. That's the importance of talking to a guidance counselor. Parents, get your students on the ball. Judy Bradley, she can take care of things once you land at UPike, and help with the process there. But parents, they do have a responsibility, and students even more so now. They have a responsibility to take care of this process as well, along with their parents, and they need to be aware of the importance of these forms, and it's part of the growing up process, becoming an adult.
Absolutely. And, Andrew, we're on Facebook. We understand that. But, there's still some parents out there that may not have a computer in their homes. And, as easy as this application is, unfortunately, the government has not allowed paper applications anymore. I no longer take those paper applications to the schools. To get that actual application, you have to call the Department of Ed and have them mail you one. I'm not even sure they'll do that now this year. I know they did it last year. When you do that process and you don't do it electronically through the internet, you're taking a chance of this being a 5 to 6 week process to get that application reviewed and actually calculated. So time, again, is of the essence. If you took the paper route, you're too late for state grant funding, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, some solutions. Public libraries.
Absolutely.
Our high schools, our elementary schools, I guarantee a guidance counselor would help a parent student get to an open computer.
There have been many times, even at this point, where we're saying file all you can do at this point, unless you don't have a job and maybe you draw Social Security. You don't have to file this as a will file. You will simply just say, will not file a tax return.
Right.
And you're done. You just list all the information from your home. And that's another misconception, is you have to file a FAFSA whether you get a W-2, whether you get a tax return completed. The FAFSA has to, and those are mostly your students that are full Pell students.
Sure.
That would, at University of Pikeville, be a Pikeville Promise student where your tuition would be guaranteed, but you have to have the Pell Grant, the full Pell Grant, and both state grants for us to be able to give you the Pikeville Promise. So it's even more important that those people file this FAFSA today, because they don't have to wait on a tax return to be completed or a W-2 to be received.
We want to, I guess, remind parents, it doesn't matter. If you feel like that your income is too high, this form still needs to be completed. Even if you're a six-figure income, you have one student, and you say there's no way I'm going to qualify for any type of financial aid, the form still has to be completed.
Yes, most institutions require that. And the reason we do is a lot of times a student, unfortunately, I waver on that as a parent of college students. Parents don't have to give permission for a student to receive a student loan. That is the student's decision.
Right.
And, of course, a student loan cannot be obtained without the FAFSA result. There's still some opportunities, though, even with those higher income families, that a determination of additional funding that we have at UPike, that if there's still, and this is a complex to try to discuss over the internet or over the phone, radio, but it is a calculation that we do called a need-based grant, that we will reduce their cost of attendance and give them an institutional grant based on that result of that student aid if they still have need left. So again, we can't award that grant unless we get the result of the FAFSA.
Has to be done. It allows the process to get started. Okay, financial aid we've talked about. Grants don't have to be repaid.
Right.
Loans do.
Loans do.
Scholarships don't.
Scholarships don't. And, a lot of times they have to continue to be earned. Many institutions follow your GPA to make sure that you are within that guideline of that scholarship to keep that scholarship.
Right.
Okay? Your GPA, you have to keep a minimum GPA for your keys. Same concept for scholarships. Although I will tell you, one of the wonderful things Paul Patton did for us is that as long as a student at University of Pikeville is academically eligible to remain a student, they keep the original scholarship we awarded them. We no longer monitor their GPAs. So look at the wonderful opportunity for those students that might have that hard transitional semester, and I'm sure that's what he was looking at. So that just pleases me. Again, I have students leave my office with tearful eyes, but it's of joy.
Yeah. Happy
tears.
Judy Bradley, UPike Director of Student Financial Services. We're out of time already. We could talk for days about this subject.
We could.
It's so helpful. I guess the most important thing for parents and students, they need to get their PIN. Mm-hmm. They need to get their FAFSA application completed. Even if they don't have their tax numbers, the taxes aren't complete, they need to do that and will file on that FAFSA and those websites again.
FAFSA, FAFSA.gov, and the PIN site is PIN.gov. That's the simple websites. They both link to each other, so you can access one and be linked to the other. The one thing I want to add to the process we're describing here is that once you file that will file, the FAFSA needs to be updated when the taxes are then complete. Okay? This is the first year the government has opened up what we call an IRS retrieval tool. And that is a tool where, let's say, Andrew, you file your FAFSA tomorrow. Your taxes get done March 1st. You will be able to go out on your FAFSA, your daughter's FAFSA, and say, okay, I want to update it. I want to make a correction, and then tell the government, now I have my taxes completed. Change your figures if you need to. That can be done with an IRS retrieval, where the government will pull in the information from your tax return, populate it into your FAFSA.
Very good.
Easy.
Good. Making the process simpler, and we think it's complicated. It's really not. It's really not a difficult process. We just need to go there and do that. A first student parent can get through this process in less than a half an hour, but it's very, very important that they do it as soon as possible.
Yes, and they do offer a tool. There is what we call a worksheet, an electronic worksheet that might be beneficial for new parents to pull out, and that is basically going to give them the opportunity. A lot of times you want to write things down. You can fill that worksheet out. It's in the same format that the electronic copy is, and then just plug your information in from that worksheet.
Judy Bradley, University of Pikeville, Director of Student Financial Services. If someone has questions, can they call your office?
Absolutely.
And that number?
It is 606-218-5254. That is not my direct number, but by all means, please call that number and just ask for any assistance. We actually, I think, got 4 calls this morning from people filing their FAFSA. So just ask for anyone to assist with their FAFSA.
University of Pikeville, Student Financial Services. The most important place on campus.
Thank you.
For parents.
We think so.
Because I tell you, when it comes time to write that check, you want to know these people. You want to know you've done things right. FAFSA.gov, pen.ed.gov, and any questions, call the UPike Financial Services office. Judy, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you asking me back.
We're the 99 Lead. It's a presentation of the University of Pikeville, brought to you by the University of Pikeville. We talk about where the 99 lead, to campus and from campus. Thanks for tuning in.